Memories of Ice Audiobook. Chapter 4. Mark these three. They are all that give shape, all that lie beneath the surface of the world. These three, they are the bones of history. Sister of cold nights. Betrayal greets your dawn. You chose to trust the knife, even as it found your heart. Draconis, blood of Tiam. Darkness was made to embrace your soul, and these chains that now hold you, they are of your own fashioning. Carol, yours was the path the sleeping goddess chose 1,000 and more years ago, and she sleeps still, even as you awaken. The time has come, ancient one, to once more walk among the mortals, and make of your grief the sweetest gift. Anomandaris. Fisher Keltath. Covered from head to toe in mud, Harlow and Sunny Meneskes emerged from behind the carriage as it rocked its way up the slope. Grinning at the sight, Gruntle leaned against the buckboard. Serves us right to lay wagers with you, Harlow muttered. You always win, you bastard. Stoney was looking down at her smeared clothing with dismay. Callow's leathers. They'll never recover. She fixed hard blue eyes on Gruntle. Damn you, you're the biggest of us all. Should have been you pushing, not sitting up there, and never mind winning any bet. Hard lessons, that's me, the man said, his grin broadening. Stoney's fine green and black attire was covered in brown slime. Her thick black hair hung down over her face, dripping milky water. Anyway, we're done for the day, so let's pull this thing off to the side. Looks like you two could do with a swim. Would take you, Harlow snapped. What do you think we were doing? From the sounds, I'd say drowning. The clean waters upstream, by the way. Gruntle gathered the tresses again. The crossing had left the horses exhausted, reluctant to move, and it took some cajoling on the captain's part to get them moving again. He halted the carriage a short distance off to one side of the ford. Other merchants had camped nearby, some having just managed the crossing and others preparing to do so on their way to Darichiston. In the past few days, the situation had, if anything, become even more chaotic. Whatever had remained of the ford's laid cobbles in the riverbed had been pushed either askew or deeper into the mud. It had taken 4 bells to manage the crossing, and for a time there Gruntle had wondered if they would ever succeed. He climbed down and turned his attention to the horses. Harlow and Stoney, now bickering with each other, set off upstream. Gruntle threw an uneasy glance towards the massive carriage that had gone before them on the ford, now parked 50 paces away. It had been an unfair bet. The best kind. His two companions had been convinced that this day wouldn't see the crossing of their master Carolee's carriage. They'd been certain that the monstrous vehicle ahead of them would bog down, that it'd be days sitting there in midstream before other merchants got impatient enough to add the muscle of their own crews to moving it out of the way. Gruntle had suspected otherwise. Orchelane and Corbelbroach were not the kind of people to stomach inconvenience. They're damn sorcerers, anyway. Their servant, Amancipor Reese, had not even bothered to get down from the driver's bench, and simple twitches of the tresses had led the train of oxen onwards. The huge contrivance seemed to glide across the ford, not even jolting as the wheels moved over what Gruntle knew to be churned, uneven footing. Unfair bet, aye. At least I'm dry and clean. There had been enough witnesses to the unnatural event to accord a certain privacy to the Major's present encampment, so it was with considerable curiosity that Gruntle watched a caravan guard stride towards it. He knew the man well. At Daru, Bouquet worked the smaller caravansary, signing with merchants just scraping by. He preferred working alone, and Gruntle knew why. Duke's master had tried the crossing earlier in the day. The dilapidated wagon had fallen to pieces in midstream, bits of wood and precious bundles of produce floating away as the master wallowed helplessly. Bouquet had managed to save the merchant, but with the loss of goods the contract had ceased to exist. After making arrangements for the master to accompany a train back to Darichiston, Bouquet was with scant gratitude for his efforts cut loose by the merchant. Gruntle had expected him to make his own way back to the city. Bouquet had a fine, healthy and well-equipped horse. A 3 days' journey at the most. Yet here he was, his tall, lean figure fully attired in a guard's accoutrements, scale hauberk freshly oiled, crossbow strapped to back and longsword scabbarded at his hip, in quiet conversation with Amancipor Reese. Though out of earshot, Gruntle could follow the course of the conversation by the shifting postures of the two men. After a brief exchange, he saw Buke's shoulders drop fractionally. The grey-bearded guard glanced away. Amancipor Reese shrugged and half-turned in dismissal. Both men then swung about to face the carriage, and a moment later Orchelane emerged, drawing his black leather cape around his broad shoulders. Bouquet straightened under the sorcerer's attention, answered a few terse questions with equally terse replies, then gave a respectful nod. Orchelane laid a hand on his servant's shoulder and the old man came close to buckling under that light touch. Gruntle clucked softly in sympathy. Aye, that major's touch could fill an average man's breeches, Queen knows. Beru Fent, Buke's just been hired. Pray he doesn't come to regret it. Tenement fires were deadly in Darichiston, especially when gas was involved. The conflagration that had killed Buke's wife, mother and 4 children had been particularly ugly. That Bouquet himself had been lying drunk and dead to the world in an alley not 100 paces from the house hadn't helped in the man's recovery. Like many of his fellow guards, Gruntle had assumed that Bouquet would turn to the bottle with serious intent after that. Instead, he'd done the opposite. Taking solitary contracts with poor, vulnerable merchants obviously offered to Bouquet a greater appeal than the wasting descent of a permanent drunk. Poor merchants were robbed far more often than rich ones. The man wants to die, all right. But swiftly, even honorably. He wants to go down fighting, as did his family, by all accounts. Alas, when sober, as he's been ever since that night, Bouquet fights extremely well, and the ghosts of at least a dozen highwaymen would bitterly attest to that. The chill dread that seemed to infuse the air around Orchelane and especially around Corbelbroach would have deterred any sane guard. But a man eager to embrace death would see it differently, wouldn't he? Ah, friend Bouquet, I hope you do not come to regret your choice. No doubt violence and horror swells around your 2 new masters, but you're more likely to be a witness to it than a victim yourself. Haven't you been in suffering's embrace long enough? Bouquet set off to collect his horse and gear. Gruntle had begun a cook fire by the time the old man returned. He watched Bouquet stow his equipment and exchange a few more words with Amancipor Reese, who had begun cooking a meal of their own. Then the man glanced over and met Gruntle's gaze. Bouquet strode over. A day of changes, friend Bouquet, Gruntle said from where he squatted beside the hearth. I'm brewing some tea for Harlow and Stoney, who should be back any moment. Care to join us in a mug? That is kind of you, Gruntle. I will accept your offer. He approached the captain. Unfortunate what happened to Merck's wagon. I warned him against the attempt. Alas, he did not appreciate my advice. Even after you pulled him from the river and pumped the water out of his lungs. Bouquet shrugged. Foot brushing his lips put him in bad mood, I would imagine. He glanced over at his new master's carriage, lines crinkling the corners of his sad eyes. You have had discourse with him, have you not? Gruntle spat into the fire. Aye. Better had you sought my advice before taking the contract. I respect your advice and always have, Gruntle, but you would not have swayed me. I know that, so I'll say no more of them. The other one, Bouquet said, accepting a tin mug from Gruntle and cradling it in both hands as he blew on the steaming liquid. I caught a glimpse of him earlier. Corbelbroach. As you say. He's the killer, you realize. Between the two, I don't see much difference, to be honest. Bouquet was shaking his head. No, you misunderstand. In Darichiston, recall. For 2 weeks running, horribly mangled bodies were found in the Gadrabai district every night. Then the investigators called in a mage to help, and it was as if someone had kicked a hornet's nest. That mage discovered something, and the knowledge had him terrified. It was quiet, grant you, but I chanced on the details that followed. Falcon's Guild was enlisted. The council itself set forth the contract to the assassins. Find the killer, they said, using every method at your disposal, legal or otherwise. Then the murders stopped. I vaguely recall a fuss, Gruntle said, frowning. You were in quips, weren't you? Blind for days on end. Gruntle winced. Had my eye on Lethro, you know, went out on a contract and came back to find. She'd gone and married someone else, Bouquet finished nodding. Not just someone else, Gruntle scowled. That bloated crook Parsamo. An old master of yours, I seem to recall. Anyway. Who was the killer and why did the killing stop? Falcon's Guild did not step forward to claim the council's coin. The murders stopped because the murderer had left the city. Bouquet nodded towards the massive carriage. He's the one. Corbel Broach. The man with the round face and fat lips. What makes you so certain, Bouquet? The air had gone cold. Gruntle poured himself a second cup. The man shrugged, eyes on the fire. I just know. Who can abide the murder of innocence? Hood's breath, Bouquet, I see both edges to that question well enough, do you? You mean to kill him, or at least die trying? Listen to me, friend. We may be out of the city's jurisdiction, but if Darachistan's mages were in truth so thoroughly alarmed, and given that Falcon's Guild might still have an interest, issues of jurisdiction are meaningless. We could send word back, assuming you're right and you've proof of your certainty, Bouquet, and in the meantime you just keep your eye on the man. Nothing else. He's a sorcerer, mark my words. You won't stand a chance. Leave the execution to the assassins and mages. Bouquet glanced up at the arrival of Harlow and Stony Meneskes. The two had come up quietly, each wrapped in blankets with their clothing washed and bundled in their arms. Their troubled expressions told Gruntle they'd heard at the very least his last statement. Thought you'd be halfway back to Darachistan, Harlow said. Bouquet studied the guard over the rim of the mug. You are so clean I barely recognize you, friend. Ha ha. I have found myself a new contract to answer you, Harlow. You idiot, Stony snapped. When are you going to get some sense back into your head, Bouquet? It's been years and years since you last cracked a smile or let any light into your eyes. How many bear traps are you going to stick your head in, man? Until one snaps, Bouquet said, meeting Stony's dark, angry eyes. He rose, tossing to one side the dregs from the mug. Thank you for the tea and advice, friend Gruntle. With a nod to Harlow, then Stony, he headed back to Borshelin's carriage. Gruntle stared up at Stony. Impressive tact, my dear. She hissed. The man's a fool. He needs a woman's hand on his sword grip, if you ask me. Needs it bad. Harlow grunted. You volunteering? Stony Meneskes shrugged. It's not his appearance that one balks at, it's his attitude. The very opposite of you, ape. Sweet on my personality, are you? Harlow grinned over at Gruntle. Hey, you could break my nose again, then we could straighten it and I'd be good as new. What say you, Stony? Would the iron petals of your heart unfold for me? She sneered. Everyone knows that two-handed sword of yours is nothing but a pathetic attempt at compensation, Harlow. He's a nice turn at the poetic, though, Gruntle pointed out. Iron petals, you couldn't get more precise than that. There's no such thing as iron petals, Stony snorted. You don't get iron flowers. And hearts aren't flowers, they're big red, messy things in your chest. What's poetic about not making sense? You're as big an idiot as Bouquet and Harlow, Gruntle. I'm surrounded by thick-skulled, witless fools. It's your lot in life, alas, Gruntle said. Here, have some tea, you could do with the warmth. She accepted the mug while Gruntle and Harlow avoided meeting each other's eyes. After a few moments, Stony cleared her throat. What was all that about leaving the execution to assassins, Gruntle? What kind of mess has Bouquet got himself into now? Oh, moan, she truly cares for the man. He frowned into the fire and tossed in a few more lumps of dung before replying, he has some suspicions. We were speaking hypothetically. Tog's tongue you were, ox face. Out with it. Bouquet chose to speak with me, not you, Stony, Gruntle growled, irritated. If you've questions, ask them of him and leave me out of it. I will, damn you. I doubt you'll get anywhere, Harlow threw in, somewhat unwisely, even if you do bat your eyes and pout those rosy lips of yours. Those are the last things you'll see when I push my knife through that tin tuber in your chest. Oh, and I'll blow a kiss too. Harlow's bushy brows rose. Tin tuber. Stony, my dear, did I hear you right? Shut up, I'm not in the mood. You're never in the mood, Stony. She answered him with a contemptuous smile. Don't bother saying it, dear, Gruntle sighed. The shack leaned drunkenly against the city of pails in a wall, a confused collection of wooden planks, stretched hides and wicker, its yard a threshold of white dust, gourd husks, bits of broken crockery and wood shavings. Fragments of lacquered wooden cards hung from twine above the narrow door, slowly twisting in the humid heat. Quickben paused, glanced up and down the littered alleyway, then stepped into the yard. A cackle sounded from within. The wizard rolled his eyes and, muttering under his breath, reached for the leather loop nailed to the door. Don't push. A voice shrieked behind it. Pull, you snake of the desert. Shrugging, Quickben tugged the door towards him. Only fools push. Hissed the old woman from her cross-legged perch on a reed mat just within. Scrapes my knee. Bruises and worse plague me when fools come to visit. I sniffed Raraku, didn't I? The wizard peered into the shack's interior. Hood's breath, there's only room for you in there. Vague objects cluttered the walls, dangled from the low ceiling. Shadows swallowed every corner, and the air still held the chill of the night just past. Just me. The woman cackled. Her face was little more than skin over bones, her pate hairless and blotched with moles. Show what you have, many-headed snake, the breaking of curses is my gift. She withdrew from the tattered folds of her robes a wooden card, held it up in trembling hands. Send your words into my warren and their shape shall be carved hereupon, burned through. No curses, woman, Quickben said, crouching down until his eyes were level with hers. Only questions. The card slipped beneath her robes. Scowling, the witch said, answers cost plenty. Answers are worth more than the breaking of curses. Answers are not easily found. All right, how much? Color the coin of your questions, 12 souls. Gold. Then gold councils, one for each. Provided you give a worthy answer. Agreed. Burn, sleep. What of it? Why? The old woman gaped toothlessly. Why does the goddess sleep, witch? Does anyone know? Do you? You are a learned scoundrel. All I've read has been speculation. No one knows. Scholars don't have the answer, but this world's oldest witch of tenors just might. Tell me, why does Burn sleep? Some answers must be danced around. Give me another question, child of Raraku. Sighing, Quickben lowered his head, studied the ground for a moment, then said, it's said the earth shakes and molten rock pours out like blood when Burn stirs towards wakefulness. So it is said. And that destruction would be visited upon all life were she to awaken. So it is said. Well, nothing. The land shakes, mountains explode, hot rivers flow. These are natural things of a world whose soul is white hot. Bound to their own laws of cause and effect. The world is shaped like a beetle's ball of dung, and it travels through a chilling void around the sun. The surface floats in pieces on a sea of molten rock. Sometimes the pieces grind together. Sometimes they pull apart. Pulled and pushed by tides as the seas are pulled and pushed. And where is the goddess in such a scheme? She was the egg within the dung. Hatched long ago. Her mind rides the hidden rivers beneath our feet. She is the pain of existence. The queen of the hive and we her workers and soldiers. And every now and then we swarm. Into the warrens. The old woman shrugged. By whatever paths we find. Byrne is sick. Quickben saw a sudden intensity like the witch's dark eyes. He thought for a long moment, then said, why does Byrne sleep? It's not yet time for that. Ask another question. The wizard frowned, looked away. Workers and soldiers, you make us sound like slaves. She demands nothing. What you do for yourselves. You work to earn sustenance. You fight to protect it or to gain more. You work to confound rivals. You fight from fear and hatred and spite and honor and loyalty and whatever other causes you might fashion. Yet all that you do serves her, no matter what you do. Not simply benign ad ifondelat, but amoral. We can thrive or we can destroy ourselves, it matters not to her. She will simply birth another brood and it begins again. You speak of the world as a physical thing, subject to natural laws. Is that all it is? No, in the end the minds and senses of all that is alive define what is real for us, that is. That's a tautology. So it is. Is Byrne the cause to our effect? You wind sideways like the desert snake, you are in truth. Ask your question. Why does Byrne sleep? She sleeps to dream. Quickben said nothing for a long time. When he finally looked into the old woman's eyes he saw confirmation of his greatest fears. She is sick, he said. The witch nodded. Fevered. And her dreams. Delirium descends, lad. Dreams become nightmares. I need to think of a way to excise that infection, because I don't think Byrne's fever will be enough. If anything, that heat that's meant to cleanse is achieving the opposite effect. Think on it then, dearest worker. I may need help. The witch held out a withered hand, palm up. Quickben fished beneath his shirt and withdrew a water-worn pebble. He dropped it into her hand. When the time comes, ad ifondelat, call upon me. I shall. Thank you, mistress. He set a small leather bag filled with gold counsels on the ground between them. The witch cackled. Quickben backed away. Now shut that door, I prefer the cold. As the wizard strode down the alley, his thoughts wandered loose, darted and whipped on gusts, most of the currents false and without significance. One, however, snagged in his mind and stayed with him, at first meaningless, a curiosity and nothing more. She prefers the cold. Strange. Most old people like heat and plenty of it. Captain Perrin saw Quickben leaning against the pitted wall beside the headquarters entrance, arms wrapped tightly about himself and looking ill-tempered. The 4 soldiers stationed as guards were all gathered 10 paces away from the mage, showing obvious unease. Perrin led his horse forward by the reins, handed them to a stabler who appeared from the compound gateway, then strode towards Quickben. You look miserable, mage, and that makes me nervous. The 7 cities native scowled. You don't want to know, Captain. Trust me in this. If it concerns the bridge-burners, I'd better hear it, Quickben. The bridge-burners. He barked a humorless laugh. This goes far beyond a handful of belly-aching soldiers, sir. At the moment, though, I haven't worked out any possible solutions. When I do, I'll lay it all out for you. In the meantime, you might want to requisition a fresh mount. We're to join Dewjack and Whiskeyjack at Brood's camp. Immediately. The whole company. I just got them settled. No, sir. You've meet Mallet and Spindle. There have been some unusual developments, I gather, but don't ask me what because I don't know. Perrin grimaced. I've sent for the other 2 already, sir. Very well. I'll go find myself another horse then. The captain swung about and headed towards the compound, trying to ignore the fiery pain in his stomach. Everything was taking too long. The army had been sitting here in Pale for months now, and the city didn't want it. With the outlawing, none of the expected imperial support had arrived, and without that administrative infrastructure, there had been no relief from the tense, unpleasant role of occupiers. The Malazan system of conquest followed a set of rules that was systematic and effective. The victorious army was never meant to remain in place beyond the peacekeeping transition and handover to a firmly entrenched and fully functioning civil government in the Malazan style. Civic control was not a burden the army had been trained for, it was best achieved through bureaucratic manipulation of the conquered city's economy. Hold those strings and the people will dance for you had been the core belief of the emperor, and he proved the truth of it again and again, nor did the empress venture any alterations to the method. Acquiring the control involved both the imposition of legal authority and a thorough infiltration of whatever black market happened to be operating at the time. Since you can never crush a black market, the next best thing is to run it. And that task belonged to the claw. But there are no claw agents, are there? No scroll scribblers either. We don't control the black market. We can't even manage the above-board economy, much less run a civil administration. Yet we continue to proceed as if imperial support is imminent when it most decidedly is not. I don't understand this at all. Without the Darichistan gold, Dewjack's army would be starving right now. Desertions would have begun as soldier after soldier left with the hope of returning to the imperial embrace or seeking to join mercenary companies or caravansary. Oniam's army would vanish before his very eyes. Loyalty never survives a pinched stomach. After some confusion, the stablers found Perrin another mount. He wearily swung himself into the saddle and guided the animal out of the compound. The afternoon sun had begun to throw cooling shadows onto the city's bleached streets. Pale's denizens began emerging, though few lingered anywhere near the Malazan headquarters. The guards held a finely honed sense of suspicion for anyone who hovered over long, and the assault issue heavy crossbows cradled in their arms were kept locked back. Blood had been spilled at the headquarters entrance and within the building itself. A hound of shadow had attacked not so long ago, leaving a score dead. Perrin's memories of that event were still fragmentary. The beast had been driven off by Tattersale and the captain himself. For the soldiers on guard at the headquarters, however, a peaceful posting had turned into a nightmare. They'd been caught woefully unprepared, a carelessness that would not be repeated. Such a hound would still scythe through them almost effortlessly, but at least they would go down fighting, not staring slack-jawed. Perrin found Quickben, Mallet and Spindle awaiting him astride their own horses. Of the 3, the captain knew Spindle the least. The short, bald man's skills ranged from sorcery to sapping, or so he'd been told. His eternally sour disposition did not invite conversation, nor did the foul-smelling thigh-length black and grey hair shirt he wore, woven from his dead mother's hair, if the rumor held any truth. As Perrin pulled in alongside the man, he glanced at that shirt. Hood's breath, that could be an old woman's hair. The realization made him even more nauseous. Take point, Spindle. Aye, Captain, we'll have a real crush to push through when we hit North Market Round. So find us a way round the place. Them alleys ain't safe, sir. Access your warrant then, and let it bleed enough to make hairs stand on end. You can do that, can't you? Spindle glanced at Quickben. Sir, my warrant triggers things. Serious things. Well, not really. Proceed, soldier. Aye, Captain. Expressionless Quickben took rear position whilst an equally silent Mallet rode alongside Perrin. Any idea what's going on at Brood's camp, healer? The captain asked. Not specifically, sir, Mallet replied. Just sensations, he continued after an inquiring glance from Perrin. A real brew of powers over there, sir. Not just Brood and the Tista Andu, I'm familiar with those. And Callas too, for that matter. No, there's something else. Another presence. Old, yet new. Hints of Talan Imus, maybe. Talan Imus. Maybe, I'm just not sure. Truth to tell, Captain. It's overpowering everyone else, though. Perrin's head turned at that. A cat yowled nearby, followed by a flash of grey as the creature darted along a garden wall, then vanished from sight. More yowls sounded, this time from the other side of the narrow street. A shiver danced up Perrin's spine. He shook himself. The last thing we need is a new player. The situation's tense enough as it is. Two dogs locked in a vicious fight tumbled from an alley mouth just ahead. A panicked cat zigzagged around the snarling, snapping beasts. As one, the horses shied, ears flattening. In the drain gutter to their right, the captain saw, with widening eyes, a score of rats scampering parallel to them. What in Hood's name? Spindle. Quickben called from behind them. The lead sorcerer twisted in his saddle, a miserable expression on his weathered face. Ease off some, Quickben instructed, not unkindly. Spindle nodded, turned back. Perrin waved buzzing flies from his face. Mallet, what warrant does Spindle call upon? He asked quietly. It's not his warrant that's the problem, sir, it's how he channels it. This has been mild so far, all things considered. Must be a nightmare for our cavalry. We're foot soldiers, sir, Mallet pointed out with a dry grin. In any case, I've seen him break up an enemy charge all by himself. Needless to say, he's useful to have around. Perrin had never before seen a cat run head first into a wall. The dull thud was followed by a crazed scraping of claws as the animal bounced away in stunned surprise. Its antics were enough to attract the attention of the two dogs. A moment later they set off after the cat. All three vanished down another alley. The captain's own nerves were jittering, adding to the discomfort in his belly. I could call Quickben to point and have him take over, but his is a power that would get noticed, sensed from afar, in fact, and I'd rather not risk that. Nor, I suspect, would he. Each neighborhood they passed through rose in cacophony, the spitting of cats, the howling and barking of dogs, and the braying of mules. Rats raced round the group on all sides, as mindless as lemmings. When Perrin judged that they had circumvented the market round, he called forward to Spindle to yield his warrant. The man did so with a sheepish nod. A short while later they reached Northgate and rode out onto what had once been a killing field. Vestiges of that siege remained, if one looked carefully amidst the tawny grasses. Rotting pieces of clothing, the glint of rivets and the bleached white of splintered bones. Midsummer flowers cloaked the flanks of the recent barrows 200 paces to their left in swathes of brittle blue, the hue deepening as the sun sank lower behind the mounds. Perrin was glad for the relative quiet of the plain, despite the heavy, turgid air of restless death that he felt seeping into his marrow as they crossed the scarred killing field. It seems I am ever riding through such places. Since that fated day in Itkokan, with angry wasps stinging me for disturbing their blood-drenched feast, I have been stumbling along in Hood's wake. I feel as if I've known naught but war and death all my life, though in truth it's been but a scant few years. Queen of dreams, it makes me feel old. He scowled. Self-pity could easily become a well-worn path in his thoughts, unless he remained mindful of its insipid allure. Habits inherited from my father and mother, alas. And whatever portion Sister Tavor received, she must have somehow shunted onto me. Cold and canny as a child, even more so as an adult. If anyone can protect our house during the scene's latest purge of the nobility, it will be her. No doubt I'd recoil from using whatever tactics she's chosen, but she's not the type to accept defeat. Thus, better her than me. Nonetheless, unease continued to gnaw Perrin's thoughts. Since the outlawing, they'd heard virtually nothing of events occurring elsewhere in the Empire. Rumors of a pending rebellion in 7 cities persisted, though that was a promise oft-whispered but yet to be unleashed. Perrin had his doubts. No matter what, Tavor will take care of Felison. That, at least, I can take comfort from. Mallet interrupted his thoughts. I believe Brood's command tent is in the Tister Andu camp, Captain. Straight ahead. Spindle agrees with you, Perrin observed. The mage was leading him unerringly to that strange, even from a distance, and eerie encampment. No one was visible maintaining vigil at the pickets. In fact, the captain saw no one at all. Looks like the parley went off as planned, the healer commented. We haven't been cut down by a sleet of quarrels yet. I too take that as promising, Perrin said. Spindle led him into a kind of main avenue between the tall, somber tents of the Tister Andu. Dusk had begun to fall, the tattered strips of cloth tied to the tent poles were losing their already faded colors. A few shadowy, spectral figures appeared from the various side trackways, paying the group little heed. A place to drag the spirit low, Mallet muttered under his breath. The captain nodded. Like traveling a dark dream, that must be Brood's tent up ahead, the healer continued. Two figures waited outside the utilitarian command tent, their attention on Perrin and his soldiers. Even in the gloom the captain had no trouble identifying them. The visitors drew their horses to a halt, then dismounted and approached. Whiskey Jack wasted little time. Captain, I need to speak with your soldiers. Commander Dujek wishes to do the same with you. Perhaps we can all gather afterwards, if you're so inclined. The heightened propriety of Whiskey Jack's words put Perrin's nerves on edge. He simply nodded in reply, then, as the bearded second in command marched off with Mallet, Quickben and Spindle following, the captain fixed his attention on Dujek. The veteran studied Perrin's face for a moment, then sighed. We've received news from the Empire, Captain. How, sir? Dujek shrugged. Nothing direct, of course, but our sources are reliable. Lassine's cull of the nobility proved efficient. He hesitated, then said the Empress has a new adjunct. Perrin slowly nodded. There was nothing surprising in that. Lorne was dead. The position needed to be filled. Have you news of my family, sir? Your sister Tavor salvaged what she could lad. The Perrin holdings in Unter, the outlying estates, most of the trade agreements. Even so, your father passed away and, a short while later, your mother elected to join him on the other side of Hood's Gate. I am sorry, Ganos. Yes, she would do that, wouldn't she? Sorry. As am I. Thank you, sir. To be honest, I'm less shocked by that news than you might think. There's more, I'm afraid. Your outlawry left your house exposed. I don't think your sister saw much in the way of options. The cull promised to be savage. Clearly, Tavor had been planning things for some time. She knew what was coming. Noble-born children were being raped. Then murdered. The order to have every noble-born child under marrying age sane was never made official. Perhaps indeed Lassine was unaware of what was going on. I beg you, sir, if Felison is dead, tell me so and leave out the details. Dujek shook his head. No, she was spared that, Captain. That is what I am trying to tell you. And what did Tavor sell to achieve that, sir? Even as the new adjunct, Tavor's powers were limited. She could not be seen to reveal any particular favoritism, or sir, I choose to read her intentions. Perrin closed his eyes. Adjunct Tavor. Well, sister, you knew your own ambition. Felison. The Otataral mines, Captain. Not a life sentence, you can be sure of that. Once the fires cool in Unter, she will no doubt be quietly retrieved. Only if Tavor judges it to be without risk to her reputation. Dujek's eyes widened. Her rep. I don't mean among the nobility, they can call her a monster all they want, as I'm sure they are doing right now, she does not care. Never did. I mean her professional reputation, Commander. In the eyes of the Empress and her court. For Tavor, nothing else will matter. Thus, she is well suited to be the new adjunct. Perrin's voice was toneless, the words measured and even. In any case, as you said, she was forced to make do with the situation, and as to that situation, I am to blame for all that's happened, sir. The cull, the rapes, the murders, the deaths of my parents, and all that Felison must now endure. Captain. It is all right, sir. Perrin smiled. The children of my parents are one and all capable of virtually anything. We can survive the consequences. Perhaps we lack normal conscience. Perhaps we are monsters in truth. Thank you for the news, Commander. How went the parley? Perrin did all he could to ignore the quiet grief in Dujek's eyes. It went well, Captain, the old man whispered. You will depart in 2 days, barring Quick Ben, who will catch up later. No doubt your soldiers are ready for. Yes, sir, they are. Very good. That is all, Captain. Sir. Like the laying of a silent shroud, darkness arrived. Perrin stood atop the vast barrow, his face caressed by the mildest of winds. He had managed to leave the encampment without running into Whiskey Jack and the bridge burners. Night had a way of inviting solitude, and he felt welcome on this mass grave with all its echoing memories of pain, anguish, and despair. Among the dead beneath me, how many adult voices cried out for their mothers. Death and dying makes us into children once again, in truth, one last time, they're in our final wailing cries. More than one philosopher has claimed that we ever remain children, far beneath the indurated layers that make up the armor of adulthood. Armor encumbers, restricts the body and soul within it. But it also protects. Blows are blunted. Feelings lose their edge, leaving us to suffer naught but a plague of bruises, and after a time, bruises fade. Tilting his head back triggered sharp protests from the muscles of his neck and shoulders. He stared skyward, blinking against the pain, the tautness of his flesh wrapped around bones like a prisoner's bindings. But there's no escape, is there? Memories and revelations settle in like poisons, never to be expunged. He drew the cooling air deep into his lungs, as if seeking to capture in the breath of the stars their coldness of regard, their indifferent harshness. There are no gifts in suffering. Witness the Tister Andu. Well, at least the stomach's gone quiet, building, I suspect, for another eye-watering bout. Bats flitted through the darkness overhead, wheeling and darting as they fed on the wing. The city of Pale flickered to the south, like a dying hearth. Far to the west rose the hulking peaks of the Maranth Mountains. Perrin slowly realized that his folded arms now gripped his sides, struggling to hold all within. He was not a man of tears, nor did he rail at all about him. He'd been born to a carefully sculpted, cool detachment, an education his soldier's training only enhanced. If such things are qualities, then she has humbled me. Tavor, you are indeed the master of such schooling. Oh, dearest Felison, what life have you now found for yourself? Not the protective embrace of the nobility, that's for certain. Boots sounded behind him. Perrin closed his eyes. No more news, please. No more revelations. Captain, Whiskey Jack settled a hand on Perrin's shoulder. A quiet night, the captain observed. We looked for you, Perrin, after your words with Dujek. It was Silverfox who quested outward, found you. The hand withdrew. Whiskey Jack stood alongside him, also studying the stars. Who is Silverfox? I think, the bearded veteran rumbled, that's for you to decide. Frowning, Perrin faced the commander. I've little patience for riddles at the moment, sir. Whiskey Jack nodded, eyes still on the glittering sweep of the night sky. You will just have to suffer the indulgence, Captain. I can lead you forward a step at a time, or with a single shove from behind. There may be a time when you look back on this moment and come to appreciate which of the two I chose. Perrin bit back a retort, said nothing. They await us at the base of the barrow, Whiskey Jack continued. As private an occasion as I could manage. Just Mallet, Quick Ben, the Wybe and Silverfox. Your squad members are here in case you have doubts. They've both exhausted their warrants this night to assure the veracity of what has occurred. What, Perrin snapped, are you trying to say, sir? Whiskey Jack met the captain's eyes. The Reevy child, Silverfox. She is Tattersail reborn. Perrin slowly turned, gaze traveling down to the foot of the barrow, where 4 figures waited in the darkness. And there stood the Reevy child, a sunrise aura about her person, a penumbra of power that stirred the wilder blood that coursed within him. Yes. She is the one. Told her now, revealing what she will become. Damn it, woman, you never could keep things simple. All that was trapped within him seemed to wash through his limbs, leaving him weak and suddenly shivering. He stared down at Silverfox. She is a child, but I knew that, didn't I? I've known that for a while, I just didn't want to think about it. And now I have no choice. Whiskey Jack grunted. She grows swiftly, there are eager, impatient forces within her too powerful for a child's body to contain. You'll not have long. Before propriety arrives, Perrin finished dryly, not noticing Whiskey Jack's start. Fine for then, what of now? Who will naught but see me as a monster should we even so much as hold hands? What can I say to her? What can I possibly say? He spun to Whiskey Jack. This is impossible, she is a child. And within her is Tattersail. And Nighthill. Nighthill. Food's breath. What has happened, how? Questions not easily answered, lad. You'd better to ask them of Mallet and Quick Ben, and of Silverfox herself. Perrin involuntarily took a step back. Speak with her. No. I cannot. She wishes it, Perrin. She awaits you now. No, his eyes were once again pulled downslope. I see Tattersail, yes. But there's more, not just this Nighthill woman, she's a Sultaken, now Whiskey Jack. The creature that gave her Reevy name, the power to change. The commander's eyes narrowed. How do you know, Captain? I just know. Not good enough. It wasn't easy for Quick Ben to glean that truth. Yet you know. How, Perrin? The captain grimaced. I've felt Quick Ben's probings in my direction when he thinks my attention is elsewhere. I've seen the wariness in his eyes. What has he found, Commander? Hop-ons abandoned you, but something else has taken its place. Something savage. His hackles rise whenever you're close. Hackles, Perrin smiled. An apt choice of word. An Omander raid killed 2 hounds of shadow, I was there. I saw it. I felt the stain of a dying hound's blood on my flesh, Whiskey Jack. Something of that blood now runs in my veins. The commander's voice was deadpan. What else? There has to be something else, sir. Yes. Quick Ben caught hints, there's much more than simply an ascendant's blood to what you've become. Whiskey Jack hesitated, then said, Silverfox has fashioned for you a Reevy name. Jennysand Rule. Jennysand Rule. It translates as the wanderer within the sword. It means, she says, that you have done something no other creature has ever done, mortal or ascendant, and that something has set you apart. You have been marked Ganos Perrin, yet no one, not even Silverfox, knows what it portends. Tell me what happened. Perrin shrugged. Rape used that black sword of his. When he killed the hounds. I followed them into that sword. The spirits of the hounds were trapped, chained with all the others. I think I freed them, sir. I can't be sure of that, all I know is that they ended up somewhere else. No longer chained. And have they returned to this world? I don't know. Jennysand Rule, why should there be any significance to my having wandered within that sword? Whiskey Jack grunted. You're asking the wrong man, Captain. I'm only repeating what Silverfox has said. One thing, though, that has just occurred to me. He stepped closer. Not a word to the Tister Andu, not Kolat, not an Omander rake. The son of darkness is an unpredictable bastard by all accounts. And if the legend of Dragnipur is true, the curse of that sword of his is that no one escapes its nightmare prison, their souls are chained forever. You've cheated that, and perhaps the hounds have as well. You've set an alarming precedent. Perrin smiled bitterly in the darkness. Cheated. Yes, I have cheated on many things, even death, but not pain. No, that escape still eludes me. You think Rake takes much comfort in the belief of his sword's finality? Seems likely, Ganos Perrin, does it not? Single quote. The captain sighed. Aye. Now, let us go down to meet Silverfox. No. Damn you, Perrin, Whiskey Jack growled. This is about more than just you and her all starry-eyed. That child possesses power, and it's vast and unknown. Kala has murder in his eyes when he looks at her. Silverfox is in danger. The question is, do we protect her or stand aside? The High King calls her an abomination, Captain. Should Kaladin Brood turn his back at the wrong moment? He'll kill her. Why? He fears, I gather, the power within her. Hood's breath, she's just a... He stopped, realizing the venality of the assertion, just a child. Hardly. Protect her against Kala, you said. That's a risky position to assume, Commander. Who stands with us? Kolat, and by extension, all of the Tister Andu. Anomander Rake. That we don't yet know. Kolat's mistrust of Kala, coupled with a friendship with the Waibi, has guided her to her decision. She says she will speak with her master when he arrives. Arrives. Aye. Tomorrow, possibly early, and if so you'd best avoid him, if at all possible. Perrin nodded. One meeting was enough. And the warlord. Undecided, we think. But Brood needs the Revi and the Bedouin herds. For the moment, at least, he remains the girl's chief protector. And what does Dujek think of all this? The captain asked. He awaits your decision. Mine. Berufend, Commander, I'm no mage or priest. Nor can I glean the child's future. Tattersall resides within Silverfox Perrin. She must be drawn forth to the fore. Because Tattersall would never betray us. Yes, now I see. You needn't sound so miserable about it, Perrin. No. And if you stood in my place, Whiskey Jack. Very well, lead on. It seems, Whiskey Jack said, striding to the edge of the Barrow's summit, we will have to promote you to a rank equal to mine, Captain, if only to circumvent your confusion as to who commands who around here. Their arrival was a quiet, stealthy affair, leading their mounts into the encampment with a minimum of fuss. Few Tister Andu remained outside their tents to take note. Sergeant Anstey led the main group of bridgeburners towards the kraal to settle in the horses, whilst Corporal Picker, Detorrent, Blend, Trots, and Hedge slipped away to find Brood's command tent. Spindle awaited him at its entrance. Picker gave him a nod, and the mage, wrapped in his foul-smelling hair shirt with its equally foul hood thrown over his head, turned to face the tied-down entrance flap. He made a series of hand gestures, paused, then spat at the canvas. There was no sound as the spit struck the flap. He swung a grin to Picker, then bowed before the entrance in invitation. Hedge nudged the corporal and rolled his eyes. There were 2 rooms within, she knew, and the warlord was sleeping in the back one. Hopefully. Picker looked around for Blend. Damn, where is she? Here a moment ago. 2 fingers brushed her arm and she nearly leapt out of her leathers. Beside her, Blend smiled. Picker mouthed a silent stream of curses. Blend's smile broadened, then she stepped past, up to the tent entrance, where she crouched down to untie the fastenings. Picker glanced over her shoulder. Vitorin and Trot stood side by side a few paces back, both hulking and monstrous. At the corporal's side, Hedge nudged her again, and she turned to see that Blend had drawn back the flap. All right, let's get this done. Blend led the way, followed by Spindle, then Hedge. Picker waved the Napan and the Barghast forward, then followed him into the tent's dark confines. Even with Trots at one end and Detorin at the other, with Spindle and Hedge at the sides, the table had them staggering before they'd gone 3 paces. Blend moved ahead of them to pull the flap back as far as she could. Within the sorcerer's silence, the 4 soldiers managed to maneuver the massive table outside. Picker watched, glancing back at the divider every few moments, but the warlord made no appearance. So far so good. The corporal and Blend added their muscles in carrying the table, and the 6 of them managed to take it 50 paces before exhaustion forced them to halt. Not much further, Spindle whispered. Detorin sniffed. They'll find it. That's a wager I'll call you on, Picker said. But first, let's get it there. Can't you make this thing any lighter? Hedge whined at Spindle. What kind of mage are you anyway? Spindle scowled. A weak one, what of it? Look at you, you're not even sweating. Quiet, you two, Picker hissed. Come on, heave her up now. Speaking of heaving, Hedge muttered as, amid a chorus of grunts, the table once again rose from the ground. When are you gonna wash that disgusting shirt of yours, Spindle? Wash it. Mother never washed her hair when she was alive. Why should I start now? It'll lose its luster. Luster. Oh, you mean 50 years of sweat and rancid lard. Wasn't rancid when she was alive though, was it? Thank hood I don't know. Will you two save your foul breath? Which way now, Spindle? Right. Down that alley. Then left the hide tent at the end. Bet someone's living in it, Detorin muttered. You're on with that one too, Picker said. It's the one the Revi used to lay out Tister Andu corpses before cremation. Ain't been a killed Tister since Darichiston. How'd you find it anyway? Hedge asked. Spindle sniffed it out. Surprised he can sniff anything. All right, set her down. Lent the flap. The table filled the entire room within, with only an arm's length of space around it on all sides. The low cots that had been used for the corpses went beneath, folded and stacked. A shuttered lantern was lit and hung from the center pole hook. Picker watched Hedge crouch down, his eyes inches from the table's scarred, pitted surface, and run his blunt, battered fingers lovingly along the wood's grain. Beautiful, he whispered. He glanced up, met Picker's eyes. Call in the crew, Corporal, the game's about to start. Grinning, Picker nodded. Go get Blend. Even cuts, Hedge said, glaring at everyone. We're a squad now. Meaning you let us in on the secret, Spindle said, scowling. If we'd known you was cheating all the time. Yeah, well, your fortunes are about to turn, ain't they? So quit complaining. Aren't you two a perfect match, Picker observed. So tell us, Hedge, how does this work? Opposition's Corporal. Both decks are the real thing, you see. Fiddler had the better sensitivity, but Spindle should be able to pull it off. He faced the mage. You've done readings before, haven't you? You said. Yeah, squirt, no problem, I got the touch. You'd better, the sapper warned. He caressed the tabletop again. 2 layers, you see, with the fixed deck in between M. Lay a card down and there's a tension formed, and it tells ya which one the face down one is. Never fails. Dealer knows every hand he plays out. Fiddler. Ain't here, Trots growled, his arms crossed. He bared his teeth at Spindle. The mage sputtered. I can do it, you horse-brained savage. Watch me. Shut up, Picker snapped. They're coming. It was near dawn when the other squads began filing back out of the tent, laughing and backslapping as they jingled bulging purses. When the last of them had left, voices trailing away, Picker slumped wearily down on the table. Spindle, sweat dripping from his gleaming hair shirt, groaned and dropped his head, thumping against the thick wood. Stepping up behind him, Hedge raised a hand. At ease, soldier, Picker warned. Obviously, the whole damn thing's been corrupted, probably never worked to start with. It did. Me and Fid made damn sure. But it was stolen before you could try it out for real, wasn't it? That doesn't matter, I tell you. Everybody shut up, Spindle said, slowly raising his head, his narrow forehead wrinkled in a frown as he scanned the tabletop. Corrupted. You may have something there, Picker. He sniffed the air as if seeking a scent, then crouched down. Yeah. Give me a hand, someone, with these cots here. No one moved. Help him, Kedge, Picker ordered. Help him crawl under the table. It's too late to hide. That's an order, soldier. Grumbling, the sapper lowered himself down. Together, the two men dragged the cots clear. Then Spindle edged beneath the table. A faint glow of sorceress light slowly blossomed, then the mage hissed. It's the underside, all right. Single quote. Brilliant observation, Spindle. Bet there's legs too. No, you fool. There's an image painted onto the underside, one big card. It looks like, only I don't recognize it. Scowling, Kedge joined the mage. What are you talking about? We didn't paint no image underneath. Hood's moldering moccasins, what is that? Red ochre is my guess. Like something a Barghast would paint. Or a Reeve, Kedge muttered. Who's that figure in the middle, the one with the dog head on his chest? How should I know? Anyway, I'd say the whole thing is pretty fresh. Recently, I mean. Well, rub it off, damn it. Spindle crawled back out. Not a chance, the thing's webbed with wards, and a whole lot else besides. He straightened, met Picker's eyes, then shrugged. It's a new card. Unaligned without an aspect. I'd like to make a copy of it, deck size, then try it out with a reading. Whatever, Picker said. Kedge reappeared, suddenly energized. Good idea, Spin, you could charge for the readings too. If this new unaligned plays true, then you could work out the new tensions, the new relationships, and once you know them. Spindle grinned. We could run another game. Yeah. Detoran groaned. I have lost all my money. We all have, Picker snapped, glaring at the two sappers. It'll work next time, Kedge said. You'll see. Spindle was nodding vigorously. Sorry if we seem to lack enthusiasm, Blend drawled. Picker swung to the Barghast. Trots, take a look at that drawing. The warrior sniffed, then sank down to his hands and knees. Grunting, he made his way under the table. It's gone dark, he said. Kedge turned to Spindle. Do that light trick again, you idiot. The mage sneered at the sapper, then gestured. The glow beneath the table returned. Trots was silent for a few moments, then he crawled back out and climbed upright. Well? Picker asked. The Barghast shook his head. Reeve don't play with decks, Spindle said. Trots bared his teeth. Neither do Barghast. I need some wood, Spindle said, scratching the stubble lining his narrow jaw. And a stylus, he went on, ignoring everyone else. And paints, and a brush. They watched as he wandered out of the tent. Picker sighed, glared one last time at Hedge. Hardly an auspicious entry into the 7th Squad sapper. Anstey's heart damn nearly stopped when he lost his whole column. Your sergeant is probably gutting black livered wood pigeons and whispering your name right now. Who knows, your luck might change and a demon won't hear him. Hedge scowled. Ha ha. I don't think she's kidding, Detoran said. Fine, Hedge snapped. I got a cusser waiting for it, and damned if I won't make sure I take you all with me. Team spirit, Trots said, his smile broadening. Picker grunted. All right, soldiers, let's get out of here. Farron and Silverfox stood apart from the others, watching the eastern sky grow light with streaks of copper and bronze. The last of the stars were withdrawing overhead, a cold, indifferent scatter surrendering to the warmth of a blue, cloudless day. Through the awkwardness of the hours just past, stretching interminably as a succession of pain and discomfort in Farron's mind, emotional exhaustion had arrived, and with it a febrile calm. He had fallen silent, fearful of shattering that inner peace, knowing it to be nothing but an illusion, a pensively drawn breath within a storm. Tattersail must be drawn forth. He had indeed done that. The first meeting of their eyes had unlocked every shared memory, and that unlocking was an explosive curse for Farron. A child. I face a child, and so recoil at the thought of intimacy, even if it had once been with a grown woman. The woman is no more. This is a child. But there was yet more to the anguish that boiled within the man. Another presence, entwined like wires of black iron through all that was Tattersail. Nighthill, the sorceress, once lover to Belladon, where she had led, the Thellermen had followed. Anything but an equal relationship, and now, with Nighthill, had come a bitter, demanding presence. Bitter, indeed. With Taskren, with the Empress and the Malazan Empire, and Hood knows what or who else. She knows she was betrayed at the enfilade at Pale. Both her and out there on the plain, Belladon. Her mate. Silverfox spoke. You need not fear the Talanimis. He blinked, shook himself. See, you have explained. Since you command them. We are all wondering, however, precisely what you plan with that undead army. What's the significance of this gathering? She sighed. It is very simple, really. They gather for benediction. Mine. He faced her. Why? I am a flesh and blood bonecaster, the first such in hundreds of thousands of years. Then her face hardened. But we shall need them first. In their fullest power. There are horrors awaiting us all in the Panion Domine. The others must know of this benediction, what it means, Silverfox, and more of the threat that awaits us in the Panion Domine. Brood Calla. She shook her head. My blessing is not their concern. Indeed, it is no one's concern but mine. And the Talanimis themselves. As for the Panion, I myself must learn more before I dare speak. Farron, I have told you these things for what we were and for what we have become. And what have we become? No, not a question for now. Jennison rule. She frowned. That is a side of you that I do not understand. But there is more, Farron. She hesitated, then said, tell me, what do you know of the deck of dragons? Almost nothing, but he smiled, for he heard Tattersail now more clearly than at any other time since they'd first met. Silverfox drew a deep breath, held it a moment, then slowly released it, her veiled eyes once again on the rising sun. The deck of dragons. A kind of structure imposed on power itself. Who created it? No one knows. My belief, Tattersail's belief, is that each card is a gate into a warren, and there were once many more cards than there are now. There may have been other decks, there may well be other decks. He studied her. You have another suspicion, don't you? Yes. I said no one knows who created the deck of dragons. Yet there is another entity equally mysterious, also a kind of structure, focused upon power itself. Think of the terminology used with the deck of dragons. Houses, houses of dark, of light, of life and death. She slowly faced him. Think of the word thinnest. Its meaning, as the Talanimis know it, is whole device. Long ago, among the elder races, a hold was synonymous with a house in its meaning and common usage, and indeed synonymous with warren. Where resides a Jaghut's wellspring of power. In a thinnest, she paused again, searching Farron's eyes. Pramola is Tralish for house of life. Thinnest as in thinnest house, in Darichistan, a house of the Azoth. I've never heard of Pramola. It is an Azoth house in 7 cities. In Malaz city in your own empire, there is the dead house, the house of death. You believe the houses of the Azoth and the houses of the deck are one and the same? Yes. Or linked, somehow. Think on it. Farron was doing just that. He had little knowledge of either, and could not think of any possible way in which he might be connected with them. His unease deepened, followed by a painful roil in his stomach. The captain scowled. He was too tired to think, yet thought he must. It's said that the old Emperor Kellenberg and Dancer found a way into Deadhouse. Kellenberg and Dancer have since ascended and now hold the House of Shadow. Kellenberg is Shadow Throne, and Dancer is Cotillion, the rogue patron of assassins. The captain stared at her. What? Silver Fox grinned. It's obvious when you consider it, isn't it? Who among the ascendants went after Lasine with the aim of destroying her? Shadow Throne and Cotillion. Why would any ascendant care one way or another about a mortal woman? Unless they thirsted for vengeance. Perrin's mind raced back to a road on the coast of Itkokan, to a dreadful slaughter, wounds made by huge bestial jaws, hounds. Hounds of Shadow, Shadow Throne's pups. From that day, the captain had begun a new path. On the trail of the young woman Cotillion had possessed. From that day, his life had begun its fated unraveling. Wait. Kellenberg and Dancer went into Deadhouse. Why didn't they take that aspect, the aspect of the House of Death? I've thought about that myself, and have arrived at one possibility. The realm of death was already occupied. Perrin. The king of High House Death is Hood. I believe now that each Azeth is home to every gate, a way into every warren. Gain entry to the house, and you may choose. Kellenberg and Dancer found an empty house, an empty throne, and upon taking their places as Shadow's rulers, the House of Shadow appeared and became part of the deck of dragons. Do you see? Perrin slowly nodded, struggling to take it all in. Tremors of pain twisted his stomach. He pushed him away. But what has this to do with me? The House of Shadow was once a hold, Silver Fox went on. You can tell it doesn't share the hierarchical structure of the other houses. It is bestial, a wilder place, and apart from the hounds it knew no ruler for a long, long time. What are the decks unaligned? She shrugged. Failed aspects. The imposition of chance, of random forces. The Azeth and the deck are both impositions of order, but even order needs freedom, lest it solidify and become fragile. And where do you think I fit in? I'm nothing, Silver Fox. A stumble-footed mortal. Gods, leave me out of all this, all that you seem to be leading up to. Please. I have thought long and hard on this, Perrin. Anomander Rake is knight of the House of Dark, she said. Yet where is the house itself? Before all else there was Dark, the mother who birthed all. So it must be an ancient place, a hold, or perhaps something that came before holds themselves. A focus for the gate into Kuril Ghilain, undiscovered, hidden, the first wound, with a soul trapped in its maw, thus sealing it. A soul, Perrin murmured, a chill clambering up his spine, or a legion of souls. The breath hissed from Silver Fox. Before houses there were holds, Perrin continued with remorseless logic. Both fixed, both stationary. Settled. Before settlement there was wandering. House from hold, hold from, a gate in motion, ceaseless motion. He squeezed shut his eyes. A wagon burdened beneath the counter's soul, sealing the gate into dark. And I sent 2 hounds through that wound, I saw the seal punctured by the abyss. Perrin, something has happened to the deck of dragons. A new card has arrived. Unaligned, yet I think dominant. The deck has never possessed a master. She faced him. I now believe it has one. You. His eyes snapped open. He stared at her in disbelief, then scorn. Nonsense, Tatter, Silver Fox. Not me. You are wrong. You must be. I am not. My hand was guided in fashioning the card that is you. What card? She did not answer and continued as if she had not heard him. Was it the Azeth that guided me? Or some other unknown force? I do not know. Jenny Rule, the wanderer within the sword. She met his eyes. You are a new unaligned Ganos Perrin. Birth by accident or by some purpose, the need of which only the Azeth know. You must find the answer for your own creation. You must find the purpose behind what you have become. His brows rose mockingly. You set for me a quest. Really, Silver Fox? Aimless, purposeless men do not undertake quests. That's for wall-eyed heroes in epic poems. I don't believe in goals, not anymore. They are naught but self-delusions. You set this task for me and you shall be gravely disappointed. As shall the Azeth. An unseen war has begun, Perrin. The warrens themselves are under assault. I can feel the pressure within the deck of dragons, though I have yet to rest a hand upon one. An army is being assembled, perhaps, and you, a soldier, are part of that army. Oh yes, so speaks Tattersail. I have enough wars to fight, Silver Fox. Her eyes glistened as she looked up at him. Perhaps, Ganos Perrin, they are all one war. I'm no Dujek or brute, I can't manage all these campaigns. It's tearing me apart. I know. You cannot hide your pain from me, I see it in your face, and it breaks my heart. He looked away. I have dreams as well, a child within a wound. Screaming. Do you run from that child? He admitted shakily. Those screams are terrible. You must run towards the child, my love. Flight will close your heart. He turned to her. My love, words to manipulate my heart. Who is that child? She shook her head. I don't know. A victim in the unseen war, perhaps. She attempted a smile. Your courage has been tested before, Perrin, and it did not fail. Grimacing, he muttered, there's always a first time. You are the wanderer within the sword. The card exists. I don't care. Nor does it, she retorted. You don't have any choice. He rounded on her. Nothing new in that. Now ask upon how well I performed. His laugh was savage. I doubt the twins will ever recover. The wrong choice, Tattersail, I am ever the wrong choice. She stared up at him, then, infuriatingly, simply shrugged. Suddenly deflated, Perrin turned away. His gaze fell on the Wybe, Whiskey Jack, Mallet, and Quick Ben. The 4 had not moved in all this time. Their patience, damn it, their faith made the captain want to scream. You choose wrongly. Every damned one of you. But he knew they would not listen. I know nothing of the deck of dragons, he said dully. If we've the time, I will teach you. If not, you will find your own way. Perrin closed his eyes. The pain in his stomach was returning, rising, a slowly building wave he could no longer push back. Yes, of course. Tattersail could do no less than she has done. There you have it then, Whiskey Jack. She now leads, and the others follow. The good soldier is Captain Ganos Perrin. In his mind he returned to that fraught, nightmarish realm within the sword Dragnipur, the legions of chained souls ceaselessly dragging their impossible burden, and at the heart of the wagon, a cold, dark void, from whence came the chains. The wagon carries the gate into Kuril Ghilain, the warren of darkness. The sword gathers souls to seal it, such a wound it must be, to demand so many souls. He grunted at a wave of pain. Silver Fox's small hand reached up to touch his arm. He almost flinched at the contact. I will fail you all. Chapter 4. Scene 1. Gruntle watches a fellow caravan guard, Bouquet, approach Borshelin's carriage, seemingly in search of a job. Buke's wife, mother, and 4 children had died in a fire while Bouquet was lying drunk in an alley just around the corner, and Gruntle thinks he's had a death wish ever since. When Gruntle and Bouquet speak, Bouquet tells him he believes Corbelbroach is the killer responsible for 2 weeks of murders in Darrichhiston, and Gruntle realizes Bouquet plans on trying to stop Kilbroach or die trying. Stoney arrives, and though she doesn't know the full story, asks Bouquet when he's going to start living again. Scene 2. Quickben meets an old woman in pale, who refers to Quickben as a snake of the desert, many-headed snake. And 12 souls. Quick asks her why Byrne sleeps and about the idea that there are earthquakes and eruptions when Byrne stirs towards wakefulness. The witch tells him these are natural things, bound to their own laws of cause and effect. She compares the world to a beetle's ball of dung traveling through a chilling void around the sun, and says burn is the egg within the dung, the pain of existence. The queen of the hive and we her workers and soldiers. And every now and then we swarm. Quick tells her burn is sick and she agrees. Quick then objects to the image of humanity and others as workers, saying it sounds like they're slaves. The witch replies that burn demands nothing. Yet all that you do serves her no matter what you do. Not simply benign, but amoral. We can thrive or we can destroy ourselves, it matters not to her. Quick asks again why the goddess sleeps and the witch says to dream. She continues by saying she is fevered now, her sickness, and thus her dreams become nightmares. Quick then says he needs to figure out a way to stop the infection and that he'll need help. The witch says he may call on her and asks him to make sure he shuts the door on the way out, as I prefer the cold. Scene 3. Perrin, Quick, Ben, Mallet, and Spindle are to join the parley at Brood's camp. Mallet tells Perrin he can sense a new power from Brood's camp, something with hints of Talanimus that is overpowering everyone else. As they ride, Spindle's warren is causing all sorts of chaos around them with animals. Perrin's mind wanders as they ride. He recalls Itko wonders about the rumors of pending rebellion in 7 cities, and thinks of how his sister Tavor, cold and canny, and not the type to accept defeat, will protect their house and especially Felison from the scene's current purge. Though he'd probably recoil from using whatever methods she's chosen, they're met by Whiskey Jack and Dujek and the others ride off, leaving Dujek to speak with Perrin. Dujek tells him his father died and his mother elected to join him, that Tavor salvaged what she could of their holdings, became adjunct, and sent Felison to the Ototarl mines, where Dujek says she'll probably be quietly retrieved. Perrin blames himself for all of it, but tells Dujek it is all right. The children of my parents are capable of virtually anything. Scene 4. Later, Perrin sorrows over it all alone. Whiskey Jack joins him and tells him Silverfox is Tattersail reborn and is also Nighthill. Perrin looks at Silverfox where she and others wait at the foot of the barrow. He and Whiskey Jack stand atop and says she's more than just Nighthill and Tattersail, she's a Sultaken. Whiskey Jack tells Perrin that Silverfox has named him Jennisandrul, which means the wanderer within the sword, and that Silverfox says Perrin is set apart from mortals or ascendants, he's been marked, something Quickben senses as well. Perrin tells him of seeing Rake kill 2 hounds of shadow, getting their blood on in him, of entering Dragnipur and freeing the hounds trapped inside. Whiskey Jack says not to tell the Tister Andy about it. When Perrin says he doesn't want to meet Silverfox, Whiskey Jack says it's beyond just Perrin and his relationship with Tattersail, that Silverfox has lots of power and Kala wants to kill her, though right now the Malazans brood and call at her against it. Whiskey Jack wants Perrin to help draw Tattersail forced to be the dominating soul inside Silverfox. Scene 5. Picker, Props, Detoran, Spindle, Hedge, and Glenn steal the map table from Brood's tent and bring it to an empty tent. Hedge lets them know how he and Fiddler rigged the earlier games and they're going to pull it again with Spindle taking Fiddler's place so they can take money from the other squads. Scene 6. The rigging no longer seems to work and the 7th squad lost lots of money. Spindle crawls under the table and says there's an image painted underneath like a big card. Hedge says he and Fiddler didn't put it there. Spindle says it's a new card. Unaligned without an aspect, it has a figure in the middle with a dog head on its chest. Spindle thinks he can make a copy and do a reading, figure out the card so they can re-rig the table. Scene 7. Perrin and Silverfox are together. Perrin feels Nighthill's presence entwined like wires of black iron through all that was Tattersail. A bitter, demanding presence. She knows she was betrayed at the enfiladed pale. Both her and Bellerden. Perrin asks why the gathering and Silverfox says the Talanimus are gathering for her benediction, but the Alliance will need the Talanimus full strength for the upcoming war with the Panion. She tells Perrin that Tattersail believes the deck of dragons is a kind of structure imposed on power itself. Each card is a gate into a warren and there were once many more cards. May have been other decks. She continues by saying there is also a kind of structure focused upon power itself. Houses. Holds. She believes the houses of the Azoth and houses of the deck are the same or linked. When he recalls rumors that Kellenberg and Dancer found a way into the Deadhouse in Malaz City, she tells him they have ascended and are now Shadowthrone and Cotillion rope. He asks why, since they went into the Deadhouse, they didn't take the aspect of the House of Death, and Silverfox theorizes it's because that house is already occupied by Hood, King of High House Death. If, however, each Azoth is linked to all others, gaining entrance to one as Saint and Cotillion did allows one to choose, so they picked an empty house throne and so the House of Shadow appeared. She adds it was once a hold, bestial, a wilder place, and apart from the hounds it knew no ruler for a long, long time. Perrin asks about the unaligned and she makes a few guesses, failed aspects. The imposition of chance, of random forces. The Azoth and the deck are both in positions of order, but even order needs freedom. He asks what it all has to do with him and she begins with Rake. Rake is Knight of the House of Dark, yet where is the house itself? Before all else there was dark. So it must be an ancient place, or hold, or something that came before holds themselves. A focus for the gate into Kurl Ghislaine. The first wound with a soul trapped in its maw, thus sealing it. Perrin then picks up the train of thought, or a legion of souls. Before houses there were holds. Both stationary. Settled. Before settlement there was wandering. House from hold. Hold from a gate in motion. A wagon burdened beneath the countless souls sealing the gate into dark. Silverfox interrupts to say she thinks Perrin is now the master of the deck, birth by accident or by some purpose the need of which only the Azoth know. When he scoffs, she tells him an unseen war has begun. Perrin. The warrens themselves are under assault. An army is being assembled perhaps, and you, a soldier, are part of that army. He tells her about his dreams of a child screaming inside a wound. She tells him to run toward the child, not away. He says he is always the wrong choice. He thinks Whiskey Jack and the other Malazans also put their faith in him mistakenly. As he looks at them he thinks at least he can tell WJ that Tattersail appears to be at the forefront, though he closes with the idea, I will fail you all. Amanda's reaction to Chapter 4. Is Fisher Keltath the fisherman we saw in Knight of Knives? Bill, no, but more to come on Fisher. This poem at the start of Chapter 4 is clearly talking about the elder gods and their experiences at the hands of the curse given to them by Kala. Lots that needs discussing and holding in mind, I think. What is the betrayal that greets sister of Cold Night's Dawn? Is this the telling of her death and rebirth into the body of Silverfox? You chose to trust the knife even as it found your heart. This might be an oblique reference to Bellerden, her mate. Referring to Carol, the work says he might make of his grief the sweetest gift. Really not sure what to make of it, but will pop it all in my filing cabinet. At times Erikson's work reminds me of many other books and or TV series. Here at the start of Chapter 4 I'm reminded strongly of Firefly as Gruntle mocks Harlow and Stoney Meneskes. It sounds like Mal teasing Jane and Zoe as they relax after a job. The teasing, the betting, the casual insults, all feel remarkably comfortable and are a great way to write in the friendship between these three characters. Build must. Resist. Anti-Fox. Firefly cancellation rant. Must. Resist. Interesting that Borchelane and Corbelbroach are referred to as sorcerers by Gruntle, and mention is made of the way their wagon crossed the uneven path of the ford without so much as a jolt. But I don't think they are mages. They certainly don't seem to be of the same ilk as the mages we've seen in the army, although I guess mages would come in all flavors and not all of them will be military-based. I wonder if they use warrens. Bouquet, did he feature in Gardens of the Moon? Was the tenement fire actually caused by the events conducted by the bridge burners? Or is Bouquet an entirely new chap to the series? Whichever it is, I don't think his acceptance of employment from Bourchelane is a sensible decision. Certainly we have this paragraph to hint at future suffering. Friend Bouquet, I hope you do not come to regret your choice. No doubt violence and horror swells around your two new masters, but you're more likely to be a witness to it than a victim yourself. Haven't you been in suffering's embrace long enough? Now, the killings in Darichiston where Vorken's guild were enlisted could have been to do with the events we read in Gardens of the Moon, the various killings that took place thanks to an assassin's war. Equally, Broach could have been behind it. What we do know is that Bouquet intends to kill Corporal Broach. I suspect this story thread will extend through the whole novel. Who can abide the murder of innocents? Stony is sweet on Bouquet by the looks of things. I like the way relationships and romance are handled so far by Erikson. No swooning from women, nice no-nonsense attitudes to it all. I also like the way that modern phrases, such as large cars compensating for a man lacking in other areas, are switched into ye olde terms by Erikson. Here, everyone knows the two-handed sword of yours is nothing but a pathetic attempt at compensation. Harlow, Bill, sometimes a sword isn't just a sword, eh? Closing square bracket. Erikson constantly reminds us of themes he needs us to pay attention to. Don't push. A voice shrieked behind it. Pull, you snake of the desert. Shrugging, Quick Ben tugged the door towards him. Only fools push. Pushing and pulling, something we've heard a number of times before now. There is also a reference to Quick Ben smelling of Iraku, and the old woman calls him Snake of the Desert, which is more, I think, than we've known before, although the fact Kalam is from 7 cities might have hinted at this anyway. Snake equals soul taken. Or snake equals dragon. Quick Ben equals 12 souls. What does this mean? 12 people within him. Bill, let's see, that's 5 sentences about Quick Ben. 5 of them ending in question marks. Get used to it. Closing square bracket. This conversation between Quick Ben and the oldest witch of tenors, the Warren, which is the path of the land, is another of those that you just know has portent for the overarching story of the entire series. Lots of hints about Quick Ben, asking questions about Byrne and why she sleeps, the idea of those who inhabit Byrne swarming, possibly into Warrens. Lots to bear in mind, methinks. Byrne is presented as amoral, distant and uncaring. We can thrive, or we can destroy ourselves, it matters not to her, she will simply birth another brood and it begins again. And here is the crux of the issue, the presence of the crippled god is a sickness upon Byrne, and she sleeps to dream, so at the moment is suffering burning nightmares. Hence the world falling to pieces around her, the wars, the ascendants gathering, the momentous events. Hey. If Quick Ben's mind nags upon something I feel it would be wise to bear it in mind. So, she prefers the cold. Strange. Most old people like heat and plenty of it, so who is this old woman? Is she younger than she seems, and not an old woman at all? Is she a being who naturally prefers the cold, maybe Jagheart blood? I would like to think she is Lady Spite, the complete reverse of Lady Envy. We've just seen reference to the heat and fever of Byrne, and then we hear Perrin has a fiery pain in his belly. Is this just a coincidence? Erikson offers us a neat little précis of how the cauldron has been simmering in the city of Pale since the outlawing of the Malazan soldiers. There is no administrative backup, and no clause to rule the black markets. The Malazans are finding themselves beholden to the Darichiston's, which is not a situation that invaders would wish to suffer. I'm grinning at the effect that Spindle's Warren usage is having on the neighborhoods of Pale. It just seems so prosaic and commonplace. Here is a juxtaposition of life and death, which reminds me somewhat of the poppies in the fields of Flanders. Midsummer flowers cloaked the flanks of the recent barrows 200 paces to their left in swathes of brittle blue, the hue deepening as the sun sank lower behind the mounds. Ouch, no matter what, Tavor will take care of Felison. That, at least, I can take comfort from. He doesn't remain under this illusion for too long, with the conversation that occurs between he and Dujek. What a truly sad conversation it is. It makes my heart hurt hearing Perrin take on the fault of the cull. Felison's experienced the death of both his parents. It sits strangely with Felison's conviction that Tavor is entirely at fault. I don't think there was a single instance where she blamed Perrin for her circumstances. The children of my parents are one and all capable of virtually anything. We can survive the consequences. Perhaps we lack a normal conscience, perhaps we are monsters in truth. Perrin's moments of reflection reveal some questions and statements that should maybe be dwelt on in the comments, the idea that we never truly move beyond childhood. We merely shroud ourselves in the armor of adulthood, the idea that this same armor can both protect us from bitter experiences, but can also trap us to suffer the memories forever. Have at it. Grins asterisk, what struck you about these matters of philosophy? And finally Perrin is told about Silverfox, and is being used to try and bring forth Tattersall within Silverfox, so that she will not betray the Malazans. She is but a child. I don't know how many here have read Stephanie Meyer's novels. I have. In the 3rd and 4th novel, Meyer introduces imprinting, the idea that two souls are joined, no matter the age of the two participants. In Breaking Dawn, Meyer allows imprinting to occur between a female child and an adult male, with hand-holding and companionship. Here Erikson chooses the opposite path, Perrin immediately shying away from the idea of hand-holding with Silverfox. I found it interesting having seen both avenues investigated in literature. Now Perrin has been gifted the name Jennison Rule, the Wanderer within the Sword, and we learn that his sickness and awakening powers are to do with his sojourn within Dragnipur. There is also a representation of even gods may bleed when Whiskey Jack says. The Son of Darkness is an unpredictable bastard by all accounts. And if the legend of Dragnipur is true, the curse of that sword is that no one escapes its nightmare prison, their souls are chained forever. You've cheated that, and perhaps the hounds have as well. You've set an alarming precedent. Ooh, wait. 2 hounds escaped. Might these be Baljag and Gareth? Bill, recall the Hounds of Shadow killed by Ray Kingo TM. These were later freed by Perrin within the sword. That's not to say B and G don't have their own little secrets. Closing square bracket. I love the image of the bridgeburners creeping through camp to retrieve the table in Brood's tent. They are like children, with their whispering and jostling and cursing each other as they carry the table back through camp. Here is confirmation too that the decks were real, thanks to the sensitivity of Hedge and Fiddler. With Spindle's rather weak ability and his odd powers, I wonder if this will have any effect on the readings and the use of the table. Who's that figure in the middle, the one with the dog head on his chest? Might that be Perrin? And the creation of a new house? Or Perrin taking a position in a particular house? It's a new card. Unaligned without an aspect. 5 pages. That is how long the conversation between Perrin and Silverfox lasts at the end of chapter 4, but my god, the amount it covers. Ideas that have been hinted at. Links between the Azoth and the Warrens. The idea that the Dead House is an entry point into the Warren of Death, but that once in there, you choose. The fact that Kellenberg and Dancer could not ascend and take positions in the House of Death because Hood already owned that position. The fact that Perrin might well now be the master of the deck. Perrin, something has happened to the deck of dragons. A new card has arrived. Unaligned, yet I think dominant. The deck has never possessed a master. I now believe it has one. Bill's reaction to Chapter 4. I like Buke's backstory for a few reasons. 1. I like that Darichiston, that jewel of a city with its blue gas, isn't painted as just some funky fantasy prop. That gas is useful and gives the city a surreal ethereal kind of beauty, but I like that Erikson gives us the darker realistic side of it, the obvious increased danger with regard to fire. I think the vast majority of authors would never have mentioned that, having not thought of it or thought why ruin a great image, and a tiny number would have used it for some spectacularly explosive scene. But Erikson gives us such an obvious downside via individual grief, as so often happens in the series. And really, what has more impact on a reader, delving into the effect of grief on an individual as we do with Bouquet and others, or some abstractly massive loss of life? I also like how Erikson not only shies away from the cliched use of such a backstory but reminds us of the cliché, the griever turned to drink. Another plus is that Buke's backstory once again lets us see relationships in action. Too often we're given the base relationships, the love relationship, the best friend relationship, and the bond, not bondage folks, bonded, you all know what I mean. But relationships in the world run the spectrum, and so we get Gruntle and Stoney reacting to Bouquet, who is maybe a strong acquaintance, but I wouldn't fit him into either of the usual categories. Even Stoney caring for him is much more individualistic rather than played as a relationship type. Finally, of course, Bouquet is just a great character and has one of my favorites endings of all characters. And he is given early on one of the classic theme tags for the series, who can abide the murder of innocence. A nice echo, rephrasing of Deadhouse Gates' children are dying. A bit more info on Quick Ben as the witch tells us she sees 12 souls in him. Explaining perhaps all those Warrens. All that knowledge. Every now and then we get a scientific glimpse of the world, which I always find fascinating in these works. We get one here from the witch who describes the world traveling through a chilling void around the sun. The surface floats in pieces on a sea of molten rock. Sometimes the pieces grind together. It took us some time and lots of angry debate and vilification, not to mention some stake burning, to get to either of those two views as consensus opinion, and one doesn't expect it from an old witch in a roughly late medieval fantasy. I'll just point out at this point that this is the second time we've ended a Quick Ben scene dealing with Burns poisoning with him focusing on cold. Any reference that closes a scene is usually going to be important, as they tend to linger when it happens twice. We get more of the Emperor's wisdom with regard to empire building, the idea that the army is not meant to be either an occupying or administrative force where was Street when we needed him cough cough. And that bureaucratic manipulation of the economy, including the shadow economy of the black market, is the way to go. Spindle's hair shirt, another great creation, as is the response to his Warren. We're getting a broader and deeper view of magic as we continue on, and one aspect I like of this version is its idiosyncratic nature. I prefer that over the monomagic we see in other works, where it's a singular body of study and magic users are mostly distinct in their power levels or quantity of spells or both. Here, the magic is much more individualistic, and Spindle is a good example of that. Bottle will be another one eventually. Speaking of power levels, what does it say about Silverfox that she is overpowering, rude, Corlat Kala in Mallet's senses? That's some serious firepower there. Poor Perrin, thinking that at least he can count on Tavor taking care of Felison. He's about to be rudely disabused of that notion. Of course, having read DG, readers are already well aware of how she's been taken care of, and so this is a painful read. With regard to Tavor, however, his description of her as not the type to accept defeat will ring on down through many pages. Back to Perrin, though, imagine the impact of each one of Dujek's news bits. Your father dead, your mother dead, your sister sent to the mines, your other sister, the one who sent her, as well as adjunct to the Empress. Bam, bam, bam. Body blow after body blow after body blow. And he takes it. Standing there, he takes it. And then smiles. This is, as we've seen somewhat already and will see more and more, one tough family. Or as Perrin says, the children of my parents are one and all capable of virtually anything. We can survive, which if ended there is perhaps grimly inspiring. But oh, where he goes next, perhaps we lack normal conscience, perhaps we are monsters in truth. Later, he muses on one of our theme words, armor. Armor encumbers, restricts the body and soul within it. But it also protects. Feelings lose their edge, leaving us to suffer naught but a plague of bruises, and after a time, bruises fade. But memories and revelations settle in like poisons, never to be expunged. So what then does the armor serve? To get one alive to a time where memories can settle. Does it in fact serve? Is it a matter of balance between overly armored and overly vulnerable? We mentioned it in our prior post. But we see instances of it throughout these chapters as well, the subtle and concise ways Erikson reminds us of plot points we have perhaps not read for 2 years or so. We've had Perrin recall the Hound's attack on the barracks, the one involving Tattersale and Haylock. And in the conversation with Whiskey Jack we get reminders of Perrin's connection with the Hounds and Rake. It all falls naturally into place, arising as conversation where it would make sense to, rising up from interior monologues prompted by surrounding events or visuals. So much better than those awkward dialogues you sometimes get when one character explains to another what the character already knows. Well, Kenneth, as you know because you were there when the Dark Lord raised his mace and blah blah blah. Nice echo in the conversation with Whiskey Jack of the prologue when WJ asks Perrin, you think Rake takes much comfort in the belief of his sword's finality? Recall Draconis and Caeryl's conversation. Draconis, the power invested within the sword possesses a finality. Caeryl, then. You must make alterations. Draconis, so it seems. Perhaps Rake shouldn't take comfort in that finality. After the fraught nature of that conversation, you gotta love its wry ending when Whiskey Jack tells Perrin, it seems we will have to promote you to a rank equal to mine, if only to circumvent your confusion as to who commands around here. Don't have anything to say about the table theft scene except I'd love to see it on film. We learn eventually that it's Perrin on the table, but we do have a few hints before that reveal, the dog head on the chest being the most obvious one. We're told it looks Reevy. Then a few pages later Silverfox tells Perrin she recently fashioned the card that is you. That's a great conversation by the way. It could have been a simple info dump, but what I like about it, and what prevents it in my mind from being that, is that both characters are feeling their way toward a truth, lacking any real, to use a keyword, certainty in their theories. I said this before about a scene with Cult doing something similar. I like listening in on smart people thinking. And so much cool stuff in here. The cards as gates into Warrens. It's no spoiler to say this will be a key revelation all the way to the very end of the series, though we'll see its use prior to that. The connection between House Azeth and House Deck. The connection between House and Hold, this or the wagon, may have been my favorite move in this whole conversation. I love the sense of lively intellect and stimulation in grasping the concept, that link between evolution and the terminology, nomadic, migratory, the wagon to settlement, Hold to more civilized. Settlement, House. And we will eventually see a place where Holds are still more dominant. More on Shadow, once a Hold, bestial, a wilder place, knowing no ruler for a long time. Balance once again, this time by the unaligned, the imposition of chance, of random forces. The Azeth and Deck are both impositions of order, but even order needs freedom, lest it solidify and become fragile. Think the twins, for instance. The gate into Dark Coral Ghislaine has a wound, possibly sealed by all those souls in Dragnipur. perhaps puncture-ing of that seal by Paran sending the two hounds through it. And outside the whole master of the deck structure of it all, let's not ignore some key lines at the end about Paran's nightmares of a child within a wound. That should echo for the reader. We after all saw two children placed into a wound in the prologue. Not a very optimistic way to end the chapter, I will fail you all. But as readers, I think Paran's POV on this is tempered by the very faith he thinks he will fail. Personally, I'm willing to trust Whiskey Jack and Quick Ben on this one.